Hi again. We're going to be reading from Escape from the Everglades by Tim Shoemaker. And we were... Right. Chapter 1. Everglades National Park, Saturday, June 13, 6:55 p.m. Parker Buckman stood on the airboat deck and searched the surface of the water. He didn't actually see any alligators, but they were there, watching, reminding him that he was an intruder in their world. He was pretty sure the gators didn't mind, though. A visitor could become a meal for some lucky alligator in one careless moment. An uneasiness clung to him like the muggy air itself. It worked its way inside and wouldn't let go. He couldn't shake the creepy sense that he shouldn't be in the Everglades today. Which was crazy. He loved the outdoors. Even he had to admit that Everglades City and the neighboring island towns of Chokoloskee were pretty much the armpit of America, but he still found things to love about the place. Once you got past the mosquitoes, that is. And Everglades National Park itself, the swampy wetlands that dominated some 7,800 square miles of southern Florida, was never boring. A place of contrasts. Bright sun that could burn your eyeballs out quicker than a solar eclipse, yet water so dark you'd think there was no bottom. Hardly a speck of ground above water in the wet season, yet trees and brush and grasses grew high above the surface, as if there were no water at all. A place as wild and uncivilized as any place Parker had ever been, yet there was still an order to it. No streets, no signs, but a seemingly endless maze of watery paths crisscrossing the Everglades. Narrow alleys and routes beat through the sawgrass. As a park ranger's son, he got to explore them as often as he wanted. Wilson Stillwaters, half Miccosukee and pretty much all trouble, was totally in his element here. His tribe had been native to the Everglades long before any white man explored them, a fact he reminded Parker about often. "Where is Angelica? She's the one who begged me to find the perfect place to mount her trail cam." Angelica Malnati, better known as Jelly, had always been into shooting nature pictures whenever her family had been stationed. Mountains, rivers, any place without humans. But ever since her dad got transferred to the Everglades, along with Parker's dad, she'd been practically obsessed with wildlife photography. Apparently, she wasn't the only one. Parker had seen dozens of camouflaged cameras strapped to cypress trees in the Everglades and along the rivers leading into Chokoloskee Bay. Jelly wouldn't miss a chance to set up her camera in some remote spot. "She'll be here." "Yeah, well, if she's not here in 2 minutes, she'll have to swim." Wilson patted the control stick of the airboat. "Typhoon wants to whip up a tropical storm out there." The name Typhoon was written vertically down each of the twin rudders mounted behind the propeller cage. It was the perfect name for the airboat. With a 350-inch Chevy engine mounted to the non-skid aluminum deck, the airboat could kick up more than just a little squall. Wind generated from the prop reached upwards of 150 miles per hour, rivaling that of a Category 5 hurricane. "Your uncle's airboat's gorgeous," Parker said. "You gotta let me drive this thing." Wilson jutted his chin toward the mangroves. "Here she comes. It's about time." Sure enough, red braids bucking, Jelly pedaled like she was afraid they'd leave without her. With her dark green Columbia shirt and cargo khakis, she totally looked like some kind of Everglades tour guide wannabe. Jelly skidded to a stop and dropped her bike. Seconds later, she hopped aboard. "Are you two finally ready?" In one smooth move, Jelly snatched Parker's cap and slapped it on her head as she passed. Parker tried to nab it back, but she ducked out of the way. This hat-swiping thing was some new game of hers. She tipped the visor of his hat and flashed Parker a proud smile. "What are we waiting for, Wilson? You promised me an Everglades run I'd never forget." Wilson tested the rudders and slid the key into the ignition. "You're a real piece of work, Jelly." He fired up the engine. "Buckle up." Which was impossible. Typhoon had no working seatbelts. And Wilson wouldn't have used his anyway. Parker climbed onto the elevated double passenger seat just behind the driver's chair and sat next to Jelly. He dug a pair of foam earplugs from his pocket and twisted them into his ears. Wilson laughed. Mikasukis don't need ear protection. With the decibels airboats put out, you could damage your hearing, idiot. What? Exactly. Parker backhanded Wilson's shoulder. Wilson grinned and revved the engine. The throaty rumble of the 350 sent powerful vibrations through the airboat that could loosen fillings, and somehow it loosened up Parker at the same time, calmed him. Maybe all that uneasiness he'd been feeling wasn't some kind of warning from his gut. Maybe it was just his own overactive imagination. Wilson goosed the gas, and the airboat picked up speed as they entered the Sea of Grass, as some locals called it. Wilson waggled the rudders, causing Typhoon to fishtail back and forth. Jelly kicked the back of Wilson's seat. We don't have seat belts, remember? If I fall off this thing, you're going to be so sorry. Wilson laughed and swung the airboat from side to side again. The next hour was pure heaven, especially since Parker got to drive most of that time. The grass rake bow skimmed right over spots where new patches of sawgrass seemed to be filling in the waterways. It was like the Everglades was taking back the lanes. True to his word, Wilson found a spot in the middle of nowhere to strap Jelly's trail cam. Which meant climbing out of the airboat into waist-deep water. Jelly was over the side without even the slightest hesitation. Somehow it didn't seem right that she went in alone. What if something snuck up on her while she was focused on mounting the camera? I'll give you a hand. Parker followed and helped her secure the camera to a cypress just above the waterline. He scanned the surface nearby, looking for telltale bubbles. It has infrared, Jelly said. If something moves within 50 feet of this sensor, I'll get pictures, even in the dark. Like he didn't know that. The spot's perfect, Jelly gave Wilson an approving nod. The place is teeming with life. And death, Wilson said. Never forget that. Parker gave Jelly a boost back on deck and hoisted himself up a moment later. Don't get all morbid on me, Wilson. Jelly toweled off and draped the thing over Wilson's head. Hey! Wilson tossed the towel back at her. This is about respecting the Glades. My people understand that. The way he said my people always made Parker smile. With his blonde hair, even long and wild as it was, he didn't look one bit Mikasuki. Maybe that's why he always had 3 or 4 micro braids going, with bits of twine and beads worked in, like he wanted to remind others of his native roots. People fish in the Glades, Wilson said, hunt in them, fly over them, like they have the right, like the place belongs to them. But nobody owns the Everglades, and she keeps score. When the time is right, she collects a toll. That's ridiculous, Jelly laughed, like a trespassing tax. He gave a slow nod. Paid in blood. Human lives. Don't get him started, Parker said. Wilson could go on for hours telling creepy stories about the Glades. If I didn't know better, Jelly said in that teasing way she was so good at, I'd say Wilson believes there's some kind of curse on the Glades. My people say that's exactly what it is. It's superstition, Jelly said. Plain and simple. Make fun all you want, Wilson said. There are strange forces at work in the world. Things we don't understand. Boys are on that list, and you two are at the top. Are you going to start this thing back up, or do we have to go? Wilson acted like he never heard. Guess how many people have died in the Glades? Here we go, Parker said. Wilson gave him this little speech the first time they'd met. They'd been friends ever since. Hundreds, maybe thousands, Wilson said. He leaned forward. Nobody really knows. Take airline crashes. 1972, Eastern Flight 401, 101 fatalities. 1996, ValueJet Flight 592, all 110 aboard. Gone. And then, you need a shrink, Wilson, Jelly said. You're not going to ruin this place for me with all your death talk. Ruin it? Wilson slung his arm over the back of the driver's seat and grinned. The danger? Knowing I cheat death every time I walk out of the Glades in one piece? That's what I love about the place. There you go again. You're obsessed with death. No, Wilson said. I'm obsessed with beating death. Big difference. There, Jelly said. You just admitted you're obsessed. Thank you for cleaning that up. Parker smiled. There was no way Wilson could be a match for Jelly when she got like this. Wilson levered the choke, grabbed the key, but stopped short of starting the engine. Don't underestimate the Glades, Jelly. There's something absolutely evil about this place. A darkness. I felt it. And in that instance, that weird feeling was back. The sense that they shouldn't be there right now. Like the Glades were more restless than usual. This is Escape from the Everglades by Tim Shoemaker, and if you want to hear the rest of it, you're going to have to get the book yourself.